Does Arizona have what it takes to finish the season at the top of the Big 12 standings? Find out after this on the latest Command Media season preview. Welcome to the latest Command Media season preview. As always, I'm the host, Connor Wilson, joined by another co-host, one that hasn't made an appearance on this series yet, Andrew Arndt. Andrew, how you doing tonight?
I'm great. I'm happy to be on these previews. You did two by yourself, and then Matt did two. So I figured I had to get in on the action. So I'm happy to be here for this one and then sneak preview at the next one.
Yeah, we'll give it away because I'm posting them both. We'll be doing the Arizona, and then we'll be doing BYU after this. So if you're a Big 12 fan, you're just coming across the channel, the video, stay tuned for that one as well. That'll be out later. But today, first off, we were talking a team that I think has the talent to finish near the top, if not at the top, of the Big 12 conference this year, and that is out in Tucson, the Arizona Wildcats. Last year, bit of a weird year. They lost a lot of non-conference games. They finished 24 and 13 overall. They lost an intense Sweet 16 battle to Duke, who ended up obviously going to the Final Four. I mean, what was your thoughts of Arizona overall last season? Because it was really weird. They had like five or six non-conference losses, which is not like them.
It was a really weird season for them. And I feel like obviously in the tournament is different, but I feel like they were a team that was just completely up and down all year. You kind of have teams that stay at the top, like Duke was just at the top of their game, Houston, all the one seeds, really Auburn, Florida. They were all at the top of their game all season. They didn't really have many down moments. But then you have a team like us who had unfortunately more down moments than up. So a little bit of a down year there. But Arizona was just kind of in the middle of the pack. They had some great wins and then they had some bad losses. But that game against Duke was really just absolutely insane. I mean, Caleb Love going out on a high note like that, just making everything he took, basically, it felt like. But I think last year's season for them wasn't an unsuccessful season, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a successful season. Like they're just in the middle of the pack. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, and the Big 12 season as a whole is a gauntlet. So they had 12 seasons go 12 losses, excuse me, going into Selection Sunday, and they were still on like what, the 4 or 5 line. So that's not usually what you see, but they had a lot of good wins to supplement the losses. And the losses, they weren't all terrible. I mean, they lost 2 games out at Atlantis to West Virginia and Oklahoma, I believe. I could be mistaking one of those losses. But yeah, I mean, they do lose Caleb Love, as you mentioned. He had that great finish to his career, but unfortunately, no sixth year in sight for Caleb Love. His career's done. And they very quietly, I didn't really realize this till I did research. They've gone down in overall win total every year since Tommy Lloyd's first year, where they were 33 and 4. Last year, obviously, only winning 24 games. So that's definitely something to look out for this season, see if they can maybe reverse that trend and be on the upward trajectory once again. But we'll start with key returners. Since we haven't done one of these in about a week, I'll go over the breakdown. We do returners, then we do key losses, then additions. We'll talk non-conference schedule, and then we'll finish up with some overall ceiling and floor predictions for the team. We'll start with the key returners. You have Jaden Bradley, who transferred in from Alabama a year or two ago. He is back, and he's the lead returner on this team. You have Anthony Del Orso, who transferred in last year from Campbell. He's a solid shooter. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be a starter this year on the perimeter, if not the sixth man off the bench. And then the big man duo of Krivas and Toby Awaka. So locking down the middle, even though they do lose an important piece at center. We'll talk about that in a moment. But which of these four do you think is going to have the most impact or is the most underrated returner for Tommy Lloyd this year?
Honestly, I'm gonna have to go with the duo that you said of Krivas and Toby Awaka because as you just said, we'll highlight in a minute, but losing Carter Bryant is huge. He went in the draft. Obviously, I kind of forget where though. Ah, shoot.
He
He
was
was up there
lottery
somewhere. Yeah,
lottery
he was
pick
in
to the
the he was
Spurs.
13th to San Antonio. That's what it is. So losing him obviously really, really hurts. But I feel like we've seen in this game that guards are easily replaceable because there's just so many good guards out there. Obviously, replacing Caleb Love isn't easy, but there's so many guards out there. But finding a good big man, two-headed monster like we've had in the past is kind of a dime a dozen. You have your big men, but to find two that are great in tandem and play well together, like Krivas and Awaka, I think that's going to be the big key for this Wildcats team.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely good to have some continuity in the front court there. But if I had to pick one, I'd say it has to be Bradley. I know I agree guards are replaceable because you see every year all these transfer guards, they go off in their new spots. But having a veteran, even because previewing what they have for incoming players, there's not too many transfers. They're relying a lot on some freshmen, albeit very talented freshmen. But having a veteran guard in Bradley, I feel like having him back, especially another year under the system, he played alongside Caleb Love last year. Now this year he has an opportunity to maybe take the keys, maybe he'll be able to take more shots because there's not many shots to go around when Caleb Love is on your offense. So I'm really excited to see how he grows in that role and helping these other players get better. But we'll talk about the losses. Speaking of Caleb Love, he is obviously the key loss. But you have Trey Townsend, who transferred in from Oakland, who was a starter last year. You mentioned Carter Bryant, who was a one and done. Henry Visar transferred to North Carolina, and then KJ Lewis, who started on the wing for them, is now at Georgetown. So those are five impactful players. They were pretty much nine deep last year. They lose five of them. That's over half of their rotation. Outside of Caleb Love, because I feel like that's an easy answer, which of those four do you think Arizona is going to miss the most this year?
I mean, it's so easy to say like Carter Bryant because he's the big name, but honestly, I think that teams tend to miss guys that transfer more than guys that go to the pros because they have a chance to hurt them. And a guy like Henry Visar, Visar going to North Carolina is definitely was not on my bingo card. So I think that one's going to be the one that hurts him the most. I mean, it's between him or KJ Lewis, but I think Visar is going to be the one that really hurts him.
Yeah, I'll talk more about KJ Lewis, and I agree. It's definitely between one of those two. Carter Bryant, it'd be awesome to see him how he develops as a sophomore, but he was ready to go as a freshman. He's an elite defender. He's going to probably fight for minutes from day one as one of the younger players in the league with the Spurs. But KJ Lewis, I mean, I talked about it with Bradley, having veteran guys in the backcourt on the wing that you know you can go to knock down a shot. He was that guy last year. I think overall he is someone that may be one of the better players in the Big East. I mean, it's maybe a stretch to say, but for his role, at least I should say, one of the better players overall. But moving on to additions, there's only one transfer, and it's Harvard guard Evan Nelson. But the freshman is where I'm really excited. Five-star Braden Burries, five-star Koa Pete, four-star, who is really almost a five-star top 30, Dwayne Aristode. And then they bring in some international players, Ivan Karchnikov and C.D. Gay, and then the wild card of all, Bryce James. So obviously, we don't know. Bryce is probably isn't going to play too much, but it'd be really entertaining whenever he does get on the floor. But which of those are you most excited to see suit up in an Arizona uniform?
I mean, we're playing him, so I don't know if I'm necessarily excited, but I am looking forward to seeing because he's really been the talk of the town kind of since he got his 5-star rank. I'm excited to see Koa Pete because I'm always excited to see these 5 stars that have all the hype since they were 13 years old. Not really, but I'm always excited to see how they pan out, and obviously I'm rooting for all of them. But I'd have to pick him. Obviously, the international talent, along with all the 5 stars, and then LeBron James Sr. There, Bryce, are going to be exciting to watch. But I think I'm most excited for Pete.
Yeah, I feel like Koa Pete is a name. I'm not that into recruiting. I say that every time, but that's a name I've heard for years. Maybe because it's a weird name, or it's a not weird. Sorry, Koa. A unique name that just sticks out on all these recruiting lists. But yeah, he should be really fun. I'm curious to see what Braden Burries does because he's another 5-star. It's rare to see Arizona, I feel like, get two 5 stars in the same class. They're always solid with recruiting. I mean, usually they have like going back, I guess technically way back at this point, 7, 8 years, DeAndre Ayton. They always have very talented freshmen. But I just feel like having them together and then add an Aristotle who's top 30, that's three top 30 guys. They have the number two recruiting class on 24/7 for this upcoming season, which is very impressive for Tommy Lloyd. Still fairly early into his tenure, but how do you think it's going to be any sort of an issue? Because that's not how Arizona has played the past few years. I mean, we mentioned all those guys that left were fifth year seniors like Townsend and Love. They have multiple veteran guys in the lineup last year. Not really too many star young players outside of Carter Bryant. Is that going to be an issue, you think, for the play style at Arizona?
It might be early on, but at the same time, you have obviously we're going to talk about the non-conference. I don't want to spoil this one, but they've got a hefty non-conference schedule, and then right after that is a gauntlet of a Big 12 schedule. They got to play Kansas, who's going to be better this year. They got to play BYU, who's obviously going to be good. They got to play even teams like Kansas State. You know, like they've got a good, real good schedule, and I feel like for it's easy to say that having that many good players on a team, people fighting for minutes may be unhappy, but with this schedule that they have, like even besides non-conference, like just the Big 12 schedule in general, I think it's going to be really important that they have that depth. And I think that these guys, if guys not might not start, like Aristotle might not start. Obviously, James isn't going to, but they kind of just have to accept their role and be happy with it. Which I feel like is really rare to see with all these top recruits. Seeing them not start might be a weird feeling, but I think that it might hurt them in the beginning a little bit with the non-conference here, the easy part of theirs. But once they hit Big 12 play, they're going to need all those guys.
Yeah, a guy that I feel like is going a little underrated is Evan Nelson, the only transfer. He averaged 10 points per game at Harvard last year, which doesn't stick out, but he's a Tucson native. He's a senior, which he's going to be relied upon by some of these younger players for some mentorship, some, what's the word I'm looking for, to be a role model. So I feel like he is someone that he's going to be impactful as well. He's someone that's going to be a seventh, eighth man for this team in the backcourt off the bench. But speaking of this youth, they're getting tested right away. Opening night in Las Vegas, the reigning national champion Florida Gators. That's going to be a really exciting game. It probably starts at like 11 p.m. Eastern because it's Vegas, but I'll be sure to try to be tuned into that one. That's their first big non-conference game, and after that, they have a couple of little easier games, but then they play UCLA. That game is at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood out in LA, so pretty much a home game for UCLA, even though it's technically neutral. Then they go obviously up to Connecticut to play UConn in a very exciting game. I know me and you personally are excited for that one. Then they play Auburn at home in Tucson. They play Alabama in Birmingham, which again, technically neutral, but it's Birmingham, Alabama. They're playing Alabama. And they close out another technically neutral, but in their favor this time, San Diego State in Phoenix. So I'm not going to let you pick the UConn game because that's too easy. Which of those games sticks out to you as the one where you're like, I have to watch this game. I have to watch Arizona in this game?
I mean, like you said, opening night against Florida is awesome, but that's the easy pick. I want to see how they do against Auburn because I want to see how their guards do. I mean, this is honestly, I forgot about this, but this is a big if Todd Pettiford even plays for Auburn because of obviously the legal issues that he's gone through in the past couple of months. But I'm excited to see them play against Auburn simply just because of their guard play, and that's where I'm most interested in this team because I'm still uncertain about our guard play. Obviously, we have Demurray brought in along with Ball and Malachi Smith. But we don't know enough about those guys to know how they play, especially in the UConn system. So I'm gonna watch probably at least five of their. I don't know if I'll tune into San Diego State, maybe I will, but I'm gonna watch at least five of their games in general, especially the first two, right before they play us. But I would say the Auburn game is probably what I'm most excited for. But they're definitely going to be a tough matchup.
Yeah, and I'll talk about that easy one you mentioned, Florida, because that game might be ugly. I mean, you look at Florida, sure they're the reigning champs, but they lost their three senior guards. They're adding in not freshmen, some freshmen, but new transfer guards like Xavier Lee, Boogie Flan. They have some continuity in the front court, but it's still going to take time to gel. And this team, a bunch of five stars, sure they're five star, they're still making their college debuts. It could be rough. I'm expecting this one to maybe be a little ugly because I mean maybe Braden Burries and Koa Pete combined for like 40 something points and Arizona wins, or they could very easily combine for 15 points and struggle and Arizona loses. You never know. It's good to have those kids tested right away because you see sometimes in non-con, obviously everyone plays at least 4 or 5 games against power conference opponents in the non-conference, but not usually on opening night. You see, like I'll use UConn for an example. They played Sacred Heart last year. They played New Haven this year. They've played I forget who else in the past, but they usually play pretty easy opponents.
Central,
Central, that's right. Yeah.
NAU.
Yes. Yeah, usually teams play easier opponents, like not like mid-majors, but I'm really excited for them to be tested right out of the gate in the premier game on opening night, which it should be that way. It's opening day. You should have these big games. I'm really props to both Arizona and Florida for making that happen on the first day of the season. All right, last little segment here, then we'll wrap up. What do you think the ceiling and floor is for this Arizona team, like based on like where they can maybe go in a tournament?
I think that they're going to be definitely a top three seed in the Big 12. Obviously, the other two that I mentioned, Kansas, BYU, I think they might be two in there. I don't know if they'll quite get past Kansas because I think this is Kansas going to be Kansas's best year in the last like 3 or so years. Obviously, not since the national championship. Since they won the national championship, I think this season is going to be their best. But I also think a big teller for them is going to be how they do in the Big 12 tournament. I think obviously this gauntlet of a non-conference and conference schedule is going to be a big teller, but I think the bigger teller is when they get to the Big 12 tournament there in the beginning of March and see how they handle playing day after day like March Madness is. And if they're handling teams in the Big 12 like even in the middle of the pack, I think they're due for a deep run, but I can see them being a top 4 seed this year again, maybe even top 3 seed. But I don't know, teams like this, I feel like kind of get worn out as the tournament progresses, but I think their floor is that they're going to be at mid, like, I think they're either going to be a 1, 2, 3, or 4 seed overall. That'll be their seed. They won't go lower than that. And I think their ceiling is that they can get to the Elite Eight, honestly. I think that they could get to the Elite Eight if they play their game the right way, but I'm really curious to see how this team meshes together.
Yeah, it's a weird one for me because just looking at the history of Arizona, like their past 10 or so years, they haven't made it past the Sweet 16, which it's crazy to say, but looking lost regional semifinal, first round, regional semifinal, then they had a stretch where they missed the tournament for a bit. That was actually only technically 2 years because one of them was COVID. But the last time they made it past the Sweet 16, I mean, TJ McConnell was on the team. And you think of him as one of the veterans of the NBA. It was really only 2014-15, which is still 11 years ago. But that's the last time they made it past the Sweet 16. Does this team have what it takes? I'm going to predict on in September that no. I feel like their ceiling is getting back to the Sweet 16. I'd love for them to prove me wrong, but I also want to say that their floor could be losing that first game. We saw them lose as a 2 seed to 15 seed Princeton a couple of years ago. They've been upset a lot. They also play very tough, like that game against Duke last year. So props to them for that. But I don't know. I think they're going to be a very good regular season Big 12 team. Like you said, I think they'll be a top 3 or 4 team. They'll be a top 4 or 5 at least seed in the NCAA tournament, like they were last year. But I don't know. I feel like I'm someone who I would much rather trust the team with a bunch of 24-year-olds, as stupid as that is, because I also hate that rule, over the team with 18, 19-year-olds with of 5 stars. It's just the experience, the toughness, I don't know, but yeah, I'd say Arizona. For me, love for them to prove me wrong. I'd say Sweet 16 ceiling, round of 64, upset, bracket buster, floor. All right. Anything else from you on Arizona as we wrap up here?
No, I can't wait for that game. I love that it's finally a real home and home, and it's not like freaking MSG and wherever the heck the Suns play. And it's a real home and home. They're going to be coming to a tough environment this year, but we'll be going into a tough environment next year out there in Tucson. So I think that this is was a really smart schedule by Dan Hurley, and I'm really excited for this game. It's early on in the season. I think November 19th is the official date.
Yes.
But I'm really excited for this one. I can't wait for it.
Yeah, no, I at the end there I kind of talked Arizona down. They're a very talented team with some very talented both returning and incoming players, and they're going to be ranked in the top 15 for majority of the year. I'm really excited to see how they do, especially on that opening night versus Florida. But as for this preview, thank you guys for watching. As I mentioned in the open, we'll be talking some BYU later. And I'll say later today in this video. I don't know if I'll get it out, but most likely we'll upload both videos on the same day. So later today, this afternoon, tonight, whenever, tune into that BYU preview to see where we rank the Cougars going into next year. But for the Wildcats of Arizona, thank you guys for watching.